Baal and llnn by W.B. Yeats. Argument. Baal and llnn were lovers, but Angus, the master of love, wishing them to be happy in his own land among the dead, told to each a story of the other's death, so that their hearts were broken and they died. I hardly hear the curlew cry, nor the grey rush when wind is high, before my thoughts begin to run on the air of Uladh, Buan's son, Baal, who had the honey mouth, and that mild woman of the south, llnn, who was King Lugad's heir. Their love was never drowned in care of this or that thing, nor grew cold, because their bodies had grown old. Being forbid to marry on earth, they blossomed to immortal mirth. About the time when Christ was born, when the long wars for the white horn and the brown bull had not yet come, young Baal Honeymouth, whom some called rather Baal Little Land, rode out of Emain with a band of harpers and young men, and they imagined, as they struck the way to many pastured Muireathin, that all things fell out happily, and there, for all that fools had said, Baal and llnn would be wed. They found an old man running there. He had ragged, long grass yellow hair. He had knees that stuck out of his hose. He had puddled water in his shoes. He had half a cloak to keep him dry, although he had a squirrel's eye. O wandering birds and rushy beds, you put such folly in our heads. With all this crying in the wind, no common love is to our mind, and our poor Kate or Nan is less than any whose unhappiness awoke the harp-strings long ago. Yet they that know all things but know that all life had to give us is a child's laughter, a woman's kiss. Who was it put so great a scorn in the grey reeds that night and morn are trodden and broken by the herds, and in the light bodies of birds that north wind tumbles to and fro, and pinches among hail and snow? That runner said, I am from the south. I run to Baal Honeymouth to tell him how the girl llnn rode from the country of her kin, and old and young men rode with her, for all that country had been astir, if anybody half as fair had chosen a husband anywhere but where it could see her every day. When they had ridden a little way, an old man caught the horse's head with, You must home again and wed with somebody in your own land. A young man cried and kissed her hand, O lady, wed with one of us. And when no face grew piteous for any gentle thing she spake, she fell and died of the heartbreak. Because a lover's heart worn out, being tumbled and blown about by its own blind imagining, and will believe that anything that is bad enough to be true is true, Baal's heart was broken in two, and he, being laid upon green boughs, was carried to the goodly house, where the hound of Uladh sat before the brazen pillars of his door, his face bowed low to weep the end of the harper's daughter and her friend. For although years had passed away, he always wept them on that day. For on that day they had been betrayed, and now that Honeymouth is laid under a cairn of sleepy stone, before his eyes he has tears for none, although he is carrying stone but two, for whom the cairn but heaped anew. We hold because our memory is so full of that thing and this, that out of sight is out of mind. But the grey rush under the wind, and the grey bird with the crooked bill, have such long memories that they still remember Deirdre and her man. And when we walk with Kate or Nan about the windy water side, our heart can hear the voices chide. How could we be so soon content, who knew the way that Noisy went, and when And they have news of Deirdre's eyes, who being lovely was so wise, aye wise, my heart knows well how wise. Now had the old gaunt crafty one, gathering his cloak about him, run where llnn rode with waiting maids, who amid leafy lights and shades dreamed of the hands that would unlace their bodice in some dim place, when they had come to the marriage bed, and harpers pondering with bowed head a music that had thought enough of the ebb of all things to make love grow gentle without sorrowings, and leather-coated men with slings, who peered about on every side, and amid leafy light he cried, "He is well out of wind and wave! They have heaped the stones above his grave in Murtham, and over it, in changeless Ogham, letters writ, Bale that was of Ruri's seed. But the gods long ago decreed no waiting maid should ever spread Bale and llnn's marriage bed, for they should clip and clip again where wild bees hive on the great plain. Therefore it is but little news that put this hurry in my shoes." And hurrying to the south he came, to that high hill the herdsmen name, the high seat of Leichem, because some god or king had made the laws that held the land together there in old times among the clouds of the air. That old man climbed, the day grew dim, 2 swans came flying up to him, linked by a gold chain each to each, and with low murmuring laughing speech alighted on the windy grass. They knew him, his changed body was tall, proud, and ruddy, and light wings were hovering over the harp strings that Etan, Midhir's wife, had wove in the hindplace, being crazed by love.